Hello everybody. Welcome back to some live coding of some CSS. So last time we had fun and went ahead and deconstructed the website. This is what it looked like. Let me pull it up for you guys. So this is what we were looking at last time. And so we completely destructed our CSS and started writing a theme. So last time I talked a little bit about adding an accent color, which I did over here. So we have our primary blue and we now have an accent. I also went ahead and looked up some images that we can start adding as we start doing our layout because we can spice it up a little bit. I also talked to the organizers of DevSpace and they are going to get me some pictures here in a little bit at some point to hopefully get some pictures of the conference up. So that should be super fun as well. I don't have those yet, so we'll figure out what we'll put up when we get to there. So going back to our code, we had definitely done all of our colors using some variables, some CSS variables, so that what we could end up doing is once we were done with the actual light theme is go ahead and create a dark theme. And so by doing these with the variables, it's going to be super easy to go ahead and apply a different set of colors for our dark theme. So the first thing I want to do at this point in terms of layout is go ahead and just start from the top and work our way down. At some point we'll probably also rethink some of our content, just like what order our content is in, to make sure that we're following top left to bottom right in terms of our order of content based on how it's displayed for accessibility purposes and for tab order and all that fun stuff. But right now I'm going to start with the navigation, and there's this big white space right here because over here we actually have the, if I inspect, you'll see that we have the button for mobile navigation. It is hidden. Inspect. There it comes. It's being a little slow. You'll see that this is actually the button for that, so we're going to go ahead, and that's why there's that big white space. It's not random margin or anything, it just happens to be. Let's go find it. If I delete, this should do the trick. There we go. That'll tell me it's in the header. There it is. It's right here, and because they had a blue background before, the image is actually white, which is why it's coming up like that. So let's go ahead and create a header. So we're going to go in our HTML. Let's go find that so that we know what that structure looks like. So I'm going to go find the header, and we're using standard, let's see, header. It is not in our index, I don't think. I'll double check. Find our index, .html. And as we can see, our header actually comes from this include right here, and it includes, we should have an include head.shtml. So that's the one we need to go find. So let's go find head. There we go. So this is what that header looks like. And so we have our rel, our style sheet. Nope, that's not what we're looking for. Those are all of our imports. We're good on that. So let's keep going. Body, ID, H1, H2. There we go. Menu. That's what we're looking for. Let's go look at our menu. Menu.shtml. Let's go look at that. Okay, so we have our menu right here with our link. So it's a standard nav. It says it's got a menu tag, and then we're going to go ahead and do a script that's for the toggle on and off. We have a display block versus a display none. That's for our mobile situation. So it is a menu. What I am going to do, however, is go ahead and make this a nav. because that is essentially what it is. However, I think, let's see, do we have any others? That seems to be the mobile version. Do we have a standard? No, we don't have a... Okay. We do not seem to have, it seems to be driving both the mobile and the desktop, which is cool. So let's go to, we have a menu CSS, so let's look at what there was in there. We deleted all of it, so that's cool. So we're going to start with the mobile version and then work our way up, because that way what'll happen is we end up, as we build wider and wider and wider, we end up having a lot more, we end up having to add more CSS. So if we start with the narrower screens and build upwards, we end up writing a lot less overrides. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in mobile view. And so we can see that in mobile view, we have our header over here and we have our nav. So let's go ahead and style that. So I'm going to say that, hey, that list for this menu, so remember we're dealing with this menu right here, right? This UL. I actually want all of these links to be nice and clickable. So then I'm going to say my links, I want them to be display block. We're going to go ahead and give them some padding. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to put a border on them for now so we kind of see what we're doing. We'll probably take it off later. It's kind of, I'm using this kind of as the console log of CSS for the moment. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. We're going to do a hard refresh. And so we can see that we have all of our anchor tags now have a border and some padding. We're in a menu, so I'm going to go ahead and take these dots off and we're going to adjust our margin and that margin and that padding that comes from the menu. So if we look at our HTML, we see that we have a list, a UL, and an LI. So the UL and LIs by default have the the dots and have some margin and padding. So we're going to kill that really quick. So we'll go back to, nope, that sidebar is not what I want. I don't want the reset. We want, got a lot of stuff open. Let's clean this up a little bit because I definitely don't want all of this stuff open. There we go, so we can see what we're doing a little bit better. There we go. So we're going to take our UL and we're going to say that we want it to be a list style type of none, and that's going to take care of the little dots. And we're going to say we want a margin of 0 and a padding of 0. And we refresh. And so we still have some margin over here, so let's find out where that's coming from. Oh yeah, that's a cool idea. Doing dashed lines for testing is kind of nice because it prevents you from kind of forgetting where they are, and it's really easy to remove them or to go do a control find for dashed, because how often do you have dashed lines in UIs? That's a really cool idea. Okay, so our menu itself does have some margin, it looks like. We can see margin block. So we're going to go ahead and say that our menu has a margin of 0. I'm going to save that. And I may need to do a margin block and not just a margin. Yep, we're going to have to do a margin block. Let's go ahead and do that, and that should get rid of that. No, still not. All right. Let's find out what's going on. Why do we still have that? We have our image. We have our menu. Margin block. We also have a margin. We have a padding inline start. So we're going to get rid of that as well. And that should do the trick. There we go. So now we're nice and we're full screened. We don't have any more of the margin and the padding. We can give those, so you can see my little dot, right? That's about the size of a finger, but we could probably use to give it a little bit more padding because we really don't want misclicks, right? We don't want our users to be able to click two at the same time. That will give some unexpected behavior. So giving a little bit bigger of a clickable area is going to be nicer for our users. So especially on that height, I'm going to go ahead and boost that up a little bit. There we go. So now we have a little bit nicer height. We're nicely set up. So let me look at what height that gives us in terms of our pixels. That gives us, there's 34 of padding plus another 53 in height. So that's definitely above 40, which means we'll be in good shape in terms of having that that size. So now what we want to do is make sure that we go ahead and reassign, right? We want to go ahead and make sure that this button that's disappeared, being that it's a PNG, right now I'm going to give it a background of, we're going to give the header a background of blue to recoup that PNG, and maybe we'll change that at a later time. So what I'm going to do is, and this is coming from, let's find out where that's coming from. So that's coming from that's our H1, that's coming from our header. So let's find out where our header is, because I think our header is outside of our menu. So we have, where is our header? So that's the head, that's the body. We're just including menu, which means our header is probably, yep, our header's right here, so we can keep that in here. So we're going to go ahead and give our header. And so when I did the styles.css, let me bring this back up from last time for those who did not join us last time. Because we're using these variables, so in Sass you might be used to having to import the primary colors and those sorts of things when you have color variables, because these are set to the CSS variable type. Or the custom properties is more the proper term. We don't have to do that because I have set it on the body. That menu will know about it. So I can just go ahead and use primary, and I don't actually have to rewrite all of this inside of our menu file, which is really cool. So I'm going to go back to our menu file. Excuse me. So we're going to go back to our menu file, and we're going to say our menu CSS. Sorry. And we're going to go ahead and give that new CSS. And we're going to go ahead and give our header a background. Oops, wrong place for the semicolon. That's not going to work very well for us. So now that we've given our header that primary color, we should be able to see that our button now shows up. Yeah, our button now shows up. We can now see our button. Everything else disappears because our text is the same color as the color I just assigned, so we're going to have to handle that. But now our button reappears. What I'm going to do for now in order to take care of this button, because I really kind of want to keep this a little bit lighter, is I'm going to go ahead and import the material icon fonts if they don't already have something like that imported, and we'll use that instead for now because I can reuse the colors from those icons, and it means that I can change those on the fly because it's an icon font, right? And then if we decide that's really the only icon we need, we'll go ahead and change that. Or if we decide it's too heavy, we'll go ahead and change it later. So I'm going to go into our head one. Remember, all of our imports were in that head file. And I'm going to see, do we have an icon font loaded? It does not. We have style sheets. We do not have an icon font loaded. So I'm going to go find that. We're going to go to Google or material icons, sorry. Oh, internet is being a little slow today. That's awesome. And we're going to go ahead and find the icon fonts. I'm being asked about the magic about which I speak. I'm confused as to which magic we're asking about. The icon fonts? Ah, yes, the icon fonts. So basically, it's the same as a regular font, except it's icons. So what we're going to do is go ahead and find their import. I want the CSS to import. No, come on, give me the import. I don't remember the URL off the top of my head. So I want the import. Developer guide, yep, that's where I should find it. Using via Google Fonts, yes please. So I'm going to take this style sheet right here. I'm going to copy that. And we're going to put it in our imports, and I'm going to put it last in our list of, over here in our list of style sheet. And then we're going to go ahead and take this right here, which is going to set, actually we're going to take this one right here. And we don't care about IE, so I'll nuke that one here in a second. But we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to save this inside of our main CSS file. We're going to go ahead and add that over here. So now every time we use the class of material icons, it is going to go ahead and instead of normal letters, it's going to give us these icon fonts. So in our case, I'm looking for menu. So I think they have one for menu. And they do. It's virtually the same as what we currently have. And so if I click on it, it's going to tell me that in order to do it, based on the import that I've used, I can just use span material icons. This is the outline list, but we'll fix that here in a second. And it's got that span. So now in our, we got to save that. In our head file, in our HTML, not in our head file, in our menu file, we're done with the head file. In our menu file, over here, menu, I'm going to replace this image with an actual, so for starters, we have an on-click on an image. That's not ideal for accessibility purposes because it's not tab indexed. The user won't know if they're using a screen reader or what to do with that. It won't know that it's something clickable. So we're going to say, hey, this is a button of type button. And inside our button, I'm going to paste that span. So we now have a span of material icons, and our class is just material icons. It's not material icons outline, so we're going to do that. And it has the word menu in it. That tells it which icon I want it to display. And now that button is what's going to get the on-click, because that's legitimate, right? We can put an on-click on a button. That's really the only thing we should be putting on-clicks on realistically, if we're going to be a purist about it. So that can go. I don't know if we need this ID for anything, so instead of nuking it, I'm going to go ahead and keep it. We're just going to move it over to the button, just in case it's being used somewhere, because I have not read through the JavaScript, so I'm not 100% sure if it's being used or not. So we're going to do that, and that's going to go bye-bye. Now the last thing we need to do is right now this button only has this menu icon in it, so it doesn't exactly tell the user what this button is doing. So we're going to add an ARIA label. Since it doesn't have any text per se, we're going to add an ARIA label. And the ARIA label is going to be the toggle menu button. Toggle menu. And that will tell the user what the point of the button is for. So now that we have this button, we can go back to our site. I've nuked the image. So the image is no longer there. And we can see that we have a button that says menu. Awesome. That means that our class is not being applied for some reason. Let's go ahead and get rid of the blue background now that we're done with that. Menu. And we're going to get rid of that blue background here. Let me comment that out really quick. And in our index, we do have, so in our head, our menu, or our head, we did import that. Let's double check to make sure we actually saved it. Yeah, it's right here. We have our style sheet. It is being imported. So why is it not coming in? Oh, there it is. It just needed a harder refresh. So if I zoom in a little bit, if I zoom in a whole lot, we can see that it's right there. It's very, very small, but it's definitely right there. Now we can see it. So let's go ahead and realign our header now based on that. So let's go find our menu SHTML. So we have our header, our H1, our button, and our menu. So I'm going to take the menu outside of the header. We're going to take this header and take it out. We're going to take it here. We're going to move it out. We're going to save. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and do a display flex. That way I can have my H1 all the way to one side, and I can have my button all the way to the other side, which will open my menu. We may put the menu back in a little bit. So let's do that. So we're going to do our header is going to have a display of flex, and I'm going to justify my content space between. My computer is really struggling today. And that determines that I want my content to be something is very unhappy. There we go. And that means that I want it to take half of my content and put it all the way to the left, and my other piece of content and put it all the way to the right. I want it to take the extra space that there is and go ahead and space it out. So I'm going to hard refresh that. And now we have our menu and our dev space. So that's starting to look like something. So I'm going to take out our borders are getting a little distracting at this point, so we're going to take those out. And I'm going to put our border around our actual header at this point. That way we can see it. And I'm going to use the suggestion from earlier to use dashed. So border dashed 1px red, border with an R. There we go. And we're going to refresh that. So now we can see that this is that big header piece. So this isn't very clickable, and this could definitely use some padding at this point, right? And it's taking the whole height because this has got a decent bit of padding in it. So let's go ahead and give it a little bit better clicking room, and go ahead and style that button. So we have in our menu, we only have one button, so we can go ahead and just say, hey, but I'm going to give it a class because of scoping reasons. I'm going to give it a class of menu button. Menu button. save that, and then we're going to go ahead in our CSS, in our, close this, our menu CSS. We now have a menu button, and we're going to go ahead and do a, instead of by default, flex stretches the content. So everything in that stretch container by default is going to be take the height of whatever the biggest container is. I don't want that. I want to go ahead and align my items. Align items, I want them centered. So that way it's not going to stretch to the full height anymore, and then I can make a nice like round button like we're used to seeing, or square button like we're used to seeing for icons. So now we have a nice square button, right? It's only taking the amount of space it needs to based on its content. We also kind of, this side doesn't seem to be right up against the edge, because remember, all of our links have a decent bit of padding on them at the moment to make them nice and clickable. This does not, which is why it seems to be at the end. But our dev space right now, the only reason it's not right up against the edge is because we have that padding right around our anchor tag, which is perfectly fine. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and give some padding to, or some margin to our button, so that it's not stuck against our edge like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is give it a margin right of, let's say, 2 rem to bring it in. So that should be 24 pixels, no, 32 pixels, 16 plus 16, 32 pixels from the edge, and that should, because that's going to be based on whatever the base size of the text is. That means that when if a user scales the text to make it bigger for themselves or smaller for themselves, they should be able to go ahead and see that. So because I used margin, we can now see our headers pushed. Why is that? Let's see, let's find out. Why is our header pushed? Yeah, that's legitimate. That's legitimate. What's happening with our button? That's legitimate. So why does our header now have? That's weird. Because we don't have any margin on it. I wonder if it's not just related to the virtualization. Let's find out. Or to the emulation from the phone thing. Let's see again. Yeah, it definitely was. So now that we have that, we're starting to look like a menu a little bit. Now we need to be able to, we're going to make this tad bit bigger, and then we're going to need to be able to toggle it on and off, right? Can't forget that piece. So I'm going to give it some padding. I'm going to give it an equal amount of padding on each side, because the icon is already square. So if I give it an equal amount of padding all the way around, we're going to be in good shape that way. So the material does everything in pixels. Those icons are roughly 24 pixels unless set to something else, because it's a font, right? So whatever your font size is going to take. So I'm going to say that I want, let's say, a padding of 1ch. Let's see what that does, because that's related to font size. It's a unit that is related to font size. So let's see what that does to see if that nicely generates an equal amount of space all the way around it. We can go more, I think. Yeah, I think we can go more. So let's go 2. Okay. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and make our menu. I'm going to go back to being a normal 100% size so we can have a better idea of what this looks like. And we're going to go ahead and now we need to do, when we click on this, we need the menu to appear and disappear, correct? So let's go ahead and deal with that. So let's look at our JavaScript, find out what our JavaScript is doing, and from there we're going to be able to deduce what our CSS needs to do. So let's look at our menu. I'm going to dock this over here so we can look at it side by side. And what we're going to do is look, okay, so we know that we're getting element main menu. So our element main menu is, I only nuked one ID and we moved it. So let's figure out where this main menu is. This is main button, main menu, cool. And it says get attribute style, if attribute style display block. Uh-oh, no, freestyle coder, I won't yell at you, I promise. I'll only mildly make fun. It'll be fine. So one thing that we have here is we're setting a attribute style, and that I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and do this using CSS, because that way what we can do is we can animate the entry and the exit of the menu, so that instead of it just appearing and disappearing, we're going to go ahead and make it increase and decrease. So we're going to make it slide in and out. It'll be swank. So, but to do that, doing it in style, like doing it via JavaScript is perfectly fine, but I find it easier to do via CSS, and I find it easier to read when doing it via CSS. So that's what we're going to do. For now, if we want this to actually work, if we wanted to see, right, if this works, what we would do, set attribute, if attribute display block. I wonder why it's not working, because it should be adding and removing the style, so this button should legitimately just work at this point. And it does actually work. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch it up just a tad, so that instead of it, like as you can see right now, it appears, it disappears, it appears, it disappears, and it pushes the content, and it does what it needs to do, but we can make that better. We can make it grow and we can make it shrink. So in order to make it grow and shrink, what we're going to do is instead of getting attributes and whatnot, what we're going to do is we're going to create two styles. We're going to create, by default, we go on our menu to be closed, right? When you first load the page, we want our menu to be closed. So I'm going to do a display none, and we're going to do an opacity, and this is because of the, well, we'll figure out the animation later. Now let's not mix and match. Let's start with the dumb functionality. And then we're going to create a menu.open with a display of block. And so now, instead of getting attributes and figuring it out, we're going to say we're going to keep the menu. We still need to know the menu. But what we're going to do is we're going to say if instead of getting the styles, right? I need to actually get what the property we're going to be dealing with first. We're going to do const get const our classes equals menu dot class list. And so from there, we're going to say, hey, of my classes, if classes dot contains open, so if we have a class list of contain open, we're going to go ahead and say menu.remove class open. If it is in fact already, so that's because it's open. If it doesn't open, so else, right, we didn't find, why is it yelling me about classes? Const is available and ES6. Yeah, we'll use var for good measure. We'll figure out what kind of missing semicolon. It's not missing. Catch up. So now we're going to say, hey, we want to, so the first half is var classes equals menu classless. I'm looking at the classes that are applied to our menu. If it contains of an open, which is what makes it display, right? We have a menu.open display block. I want you to go ahead and remove it. If we didn't find a class of open, it means we're closed. So we want to go ahead and add class open. So what I've done here is essentially the exact same thing we were doing before, but instead of dealing with inline styles, I am now controlling all of my styles from my style sheet, which if you're a little bit of a purist when it comes to that, from my perspective, that's where I like my styles to belong. I like my JavaScript to belong in my JavaScript and my styles to belong in my styles. Now obviously we have a style script inside of our SHTML, so I'm not being a complete purist about it, but you get my drift. So let's reload. And what you will find is that it is essentially doing the exact same thing. I'm going to close this really quick. There we go. Hopefully that gives me a little bit more bandwidth. See if my computer quits being as slow. Oh yeah, that helped. So now if I click, we should open. If I click, we should open. We don't. I broke it. Oh, there. Whoa. Okay. That's interesting behavior, to say the least. Let's try that again. Are we done thinking, computer? Let's find out what these console errors are all about. Maybe that's what the issue is. So it is definitely trying to find some scripts it can't find, but that's fine. We don't care about that. Alright, let's click our button. Menu add class is not a function. Why not? Oh, because that's what it's supposed to be. And I think it's class list. I'll have to double check if this isn't. If you try to mix your jQuery and your regular JavaScript all in one, it doesn't help. I think this is the syntax. If it's not it, we'll have to go look it up. Because I've been spending a lot of time in Angular world, which I can just do an ng class for, which obviously since we are in regular plain old vanilla JavaScript at the moment, I do not have those niceties. So we'll have to, there we go, now we're working. So we've essentially created the exact same behavior we had before, but now we can fancy it up. So there is a little bit of an intricacy with animations when it comes to making something bigger and making something smaller. So in this case, we're going from a display none to a display block. So the opening will be a breeze. The closing, however, will not, because if we simply remove the class of open, the display none will get applied, and it will not wait for the animation to be done in order to close it. So if we want to animate it in, that's going to be a no-brainer. But animating it back out again, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a keyframe. So our keyframes is one of the ways in which we can make animations, and we're going to call this our menu animation. Our menu animation. There's probably a better name for that, but that's what we're going to call it. And so we're going to have at 0%, we're going to want it to have a certain behavior, and at 100% of our animation, and that's going to be based on our animation time, it's going to have a specific behavior. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say, hey, when we add the class of open, I want you to go ahead and animate that. So animation dot animation. The animation that we're calling is the menu animation. We want to go ahead and ease in and out. That's the function I'm going to use. There's some pre-made one. We could go fancy and write a cubic Bezier. We could go ahead and do ease in, ease out. We can make it just linear. That has to do with how it like what the speed and acceleration is. So I'm saying that I want you to start slow, get faster, and then slow down again. So that's what ease in and out is. And then I'm going to say that I want you to take, and I'm going to make it kind of slow for now. I'm going to make it take 1 second. We'll speed that up in a minute. And I only want you to run once. So I'm going to say I want you to run once. If I put infinite here, it would run over and over and over again. We don't want that. And if I don't put anything, it'll just run once anyway. So, ooh, wrong button. Control save. Let's go ahead and refresh. So we don't have anything in our animation, so this will do nothing other than hopefully not break. And we have not broken, which is good. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is go ahead and write what that keyframe looks like. So at 0%, when we just start our animation, I want it to have a height of 0 pixels. Now over here, you'd be tempted to saying, okay, at the end of our animation, since we're increasing the size of our animation, I want you to have a height of 100%. Unfortunately, CSS does not let us do that. So I'm going to do a little trick in order to be able to play on that height. And I'm going to say I want you to have a max height. And I'm going to shoot a random number for now, and we can tailor that eventually. So we're going to say let's 500 pixels. Because now it's going to go from a max height of unset or a max height. Let's go ahead and explicitly set it. Max height of 0 to a max height of 500 pixels. So that's going to say that, hey, we can now animate on that. We can now play on that. Max height. Okay. So now that I can save that. Something's gone wrong. Oh. There we go. There you go. All right, we're going to save that. And so when we go ahead and open, as soon as it's done refreshing, we can see that we now have that movement. We can see our text, but as you can see, we're getting the contents are there, and then it's getting shoved, and we can see it's doing some weird stuff to our content. And so what we're going to want to say is, hey, we want to, no matter what, we want overflow to be hidden. And we're actually going to set that here. Because we don't ever really, we can set that both ways. When overflow of hidden, because that will make sure that it keeps the size of its container. So any extra info that it has in there, it's not going to go ahead and bleed over. So you're going to start seeing it roll in and out. So if I go ahead and do that, now you can see it's rolling in and out. It's a little slow. So we're going to go. So if I speed it up, and I'm going to give it a background just so you can see what's going on a little bit more. And give it a background of, let's say, gray. It's not going to be pretty, but it'll allow you to see what's going on. Background. So as you can see, it now starts, it scrolls in, but as I close it, you can see it still just disappears. So now we need to deal with the ability to close it, right? And we can make this a little bit smoother just by saying 250 milliseconds. And so the speed will help make it look a little bit smoother. The thing about speed in animation is if your animations are too fast, the user can't see them. If the animation is too slow, the user will assume that your site is laggy. So that's not good either. So that 250 to 500 milliseconds is kind of where you want to be. So now we're going ahead, we're increasing and we're sliding in. Now we want to go ahead and slide out. So in order to slide out, we're going to create a class called closing. And that's where we're going to go ahead and set our animation for close. And I'm not going to write a new animation to do this. I'm going to take our animation here. And I'm going to tell it, hey, guess what? That way I can have them in the same order. 250. I'm going to do 250. Oops. We'll give it a unit. And I'm going to tell it to go ahead and reverse. So by telling it to reverse, what I'm essentially telling it is I want you to take this animation and play it backwards. So by doing that, instead of when I click to open, right? When I click to open, it slides in. Well, when I'm going to click to close, it's going to slide out. Except right now, we're not doing anything with that closed bit. So now over here we say, hey, if it contains open, I want you to remove open. That's all fun and games, but we're not going to remove it yet. We're going to actually add the class of closing. This is going to give our menu time to close before we go ahead and remove that class. So right now, if I do this, you'll see the animation and I'll pop back up again until we actually remove the class of open. So we're open. I close. Let it catch up. I close. Or not. Why not? Closing, closing, closing. If contains open, add closing. Yeah. That should totally work. Why is it not working? Let's find out. We have our menu. We open the menu. We close the menu. Did it actually inspect? Did it add the class? Let's start with that. Why computer? Why so slow? Our menu does have a class of closing. So why does it not want to do it? Because it should reverse animation, keyframe menu, use in and out, reverse. Add closing. Why? You should be shrinking. I want you to do it once. I want you to do it once. Can you do that? Refresh. We opened. And now we're not closing. Why? Why? I don't have a typo. It is adding it in. Well, let's see. Let's really make it go insane. We're going to do an infinite. And we're going to get rid of the reverse just for a second to make sure that it is not the issue. Reopen. Okay, it's definitely hating us now. Good. Right? Because it's blinking all over the place. I won't subject you guys to that much longer. So we're going to say reverse. We're going to make it a little bit slower. That way we can see what's going on. That could be part of the problem. We're going to put 1 second. I'm going to save. And what we're going to do is when the animation ends, so we're going to say menu dot on animation end. And we'll have to add a listener to that. I want to go ahead and do some things. We're going to go ahead and function. Let's do this the new way, and then we'll figure out if I need. I'll figure it out offline if it can go ahead and do that. I'm going to do on animation end. Go ahead and menu dot class list. dot remove open. And we're going to go ahead and clean up after ourselves and also remove closing. Now we're doing this the hard way. We could totally just go get a library and do this, but this is a lot more fun. So let's go ahead and refresh. Refresh without giving people seizures, please. There we go. And I did take out that infinite. Let's double check. Yeah, I did take out that infinite. Good. Okay. So we open. We close. Maybe. No, why not? I said we open. We close. Not increasing on the errors. Remove open, remove close. Let's look at the structure of on animation end, because I don't think I have that syntax correctly. On animation end. There we go. There we go. Let's look at that. Oh, that was random. On animation end says that we need to add the event listener. That is what I thought. I didn't mention that earlier, and then we never did it. That makes sense now. So what we're going to do is on open contains open, closing else. We are going to go ahead and on animation end. We are going to go ahead and add the listener. Actually, we could probably just leave the listener on it all the time because we only have one button. So we can just probably just do that. So we're going to go ahead and say, we're going to do an onload. So we're going to do a function, because that way we can add the menu function, yep. And boop, 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 boop. That should do the trick. Something like that. Here we go. I guess I could name it. I don't really need to usually. There it is. There it is. There it is. We'll get there. There it is. Okay. Something. It should let me just do that. Does it want it this way? Yeah, probably. Okay. So we're going to say... Why is it still complaining? It is closed. Fine. Fine. I don't mean to name you. We'll name you and then we'll run it and it'll be fine. Okay, so we're going to say we want to go ahead and get our menu. So we want that. And we don't want to do that 10 times. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to go ahead and do this. And say var menu. And now menu is going to equal to that. And then we're going to go ahead and say menu dot add event listener on animation end. There's our pretty function that we had copied earlier. But we do need to change that it is menu. Menu. And on animation and console log, animation and ended. Let's just start with that because that's a good place to start. That is a very good place to start. And then I'm going to go ahead and run on load. I apparently can't spell. And once this actually console logs, we will probably call it good for today. So, we'll just call it load. And then we're gonna say load. There are prettier ways to do this. And then we're going to save. And then for next time, we will find out how to get this to actually accept modern JavaScript. So, we are going to go ahead and refresh. And we are going to inspect. I know I promised CSS and we've been doing a lot of JavaScript today, but that's okay. Sometimes you just got to do what you have to do. Because there's some limitations with keyframes and with CSS animations where sometimes you just have to resort to JavaScript. So that expands console. Console. Toggle menu is not defined. Alright, I broke it. Toggle menu should be defined. How did I break it? Let's move that for a moment. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to add our event listener inside of the toggle menu, because otherwise we're going to be adding an event listener every single time we toggle the menu, which that would be bad. On animation end is not a function. Yes, we know that. So what we want to do is go ahead and this is where this needs to bloody work. Okay, so this does not need to be here. That was what we copied and pasted from the documentation. We don't want that. We want to have our onload function. There we go. We're going to go ahead and add the animation end, and now it should console log. So this should do the trick. I know I've said that like 5 times, but that's the joys of programming, right? You think it's going to work. Animation ended, so as you can see, once the animation opened, it went ahead and logged the animation ended, and now menu on animation end is not a function. 66. Why? Because we're redefining menu. So now we can do bar menu, menu, and we've already defined that as menu, so we don't need to do that again because we're going to do it on load. That should do it. Now we're always talking about the same menu. Menu. Animation ended. Good. Menu. On animation end is not a function. Why is it a function when I open but not when I close? That is a very good question. can remove that typo for sure. Menu, that animation ended. Ah, that's the issue. Because we no longer need that. That is where we need that, but we only wanted to trigger. See, now that's the key. We only want it to trigger when we're closing, right? We don't want to remove the open when we're opening. We only want to do it if it's closed. So we want to double check that, hey, menu.classList. This little game we were playing over here, this can go away now. This little game we were playing over here that contains open, we want to make sure that we contain, that we are not trying to close. So we want to make sure that we contain closing before we play this game. So I'm going to say, does it contain closing? Because that means we're in the process of closing. And only if that is true do I want you to run. And now that we have our listeners, we have everything set up, we should be working now. And hopefully I did get rid of that typo, so we should be good there. Because capitalization matters. We opened. We did not close. But we're no longer getting the same error. We're getting classes is not defined. So now, class list, remove. Where do we have classes? Speaker HTML 58. We're not even dealing with speaker HTML, so that doesn't really matter at the moment. Oh, we are on speaker HTML. Let's go back to localhost. See if that, just a standard open, the home page. We're open. Getting the same classes is not defined. Oh, classes that contain. That's why we need the menu. Menu dot class list. There we go. Refresh. Open. Please close. Huh. That's interesting. Add event listener animation end. We have our function. It contains closing. Let's go ahead and do a console log just to make sure it's actually doing the thing. Because we got rid of that, so now we can't know for sure that it is actually doing the thing, that it is actually triggering. And then we will find out if we can open or close it. Open. Animation end, we're good. Close. Nada. Okay. If contains open, add closing. So let's see, are we closing? Let's find out. We opened. We are closing, but obviously the animation is not triggering, or something's happening that's making the animation never trigger, because it's never actually triggering the end either. So something about this is not working. Or I'm just being impatient because we set it to 1 second. That could be the thing too. So let's find out if that was just it and it's just me being really impatient. Closing. It is definitely not triggering that animation. Why? Let's give you a 1. Make sure that's not just that dumb. Since I have the reverse at the end. Sometimes when you if you use shorthand properties and you kind of skip some things, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the property. That was not it. Let's take the reverse out. So this is going to act really funky if it was related to the reverse. It is not related to the reverse. Okay. Closing. It never is ending. So let's go ahead and see if closing is... We know that closing is being applied. We tried that earlier. Is it actually reverse? Maybe it's inverse. Let's check that. Now I'm second guessing myself. Animation direction property. That's what we're looking for. It is in fact reverse. So that's not it. Load is not defined. This may be related to our little load function that is not being... It is not behaving the way I want it to. Let's try that. Let's see. Cool, cool. Closing. Set timeout. Message handler. Request animation frame. Request animation frame. Okay, so I'll have to find out why it's giving request animation frame issues when we're closing. One of the things we can do to debug this is to go into our DevTools. There is an animation setting we can set. I think it's in More Tools, Animations. And what that will do is, in theory, when you trigger an animation, so if I refresh, I can go ahead and trigger an animation. I can trigger waiting for animations. So something is definitely going wrong with this today. So what I will need to do is go figure out what is going on, because the something about my computer is being really laggy, and now it's not recognizing. So see, when I trigger an animation, oh, now maybe it is. it is definitely not picking up what's going on. So I'm going to have to go figure that out offline, and I'll let you guys know, because watching me debug this is probably not the funnest thing in the whole wide world. So today we did get really far. To kind of recap, the idea being that to take our header and go ahead and animate that closing in and out. And part of the reason we want to go ahead and animate that closing in and out is because it's a lot less jarring for our users to have things, you know, come in and out from where they triggered it, rather than just kind of magically pop up and show up. That gives the user a little bit of time to understand what just happened to their UI and why things just magically moved. So we're going to go ahead and call it good for today while I figure out why things are not working properly, and hopefully be back in a state next week for this to work correctly. So I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks again for joining us, and happy coding.